Harry's wife. Are you a human being? Now, I'm not asking that question of you as to whether you are, and nor am I asking Harry's wife if she is a human being. She is, although of course there are numerous differences that she has compared with other members of the species Homo sapiens. Nevertheless, another week rolls by, and as a consequence of another week passing, that means that there is another archetype's podcrap to unpick. The podcasts themselves are fertile ground for the demonstration of Harry's wife's narcissism. However, it also provides us with an opportunity to understand what other people think about them. Serious journalists, members of the public, how do they view it? Is there a sea change with regard to the way that people have been viewing them? For the most part, of course, the vast majority of people have ridiculed them, lampooned them, and picked them apart in terms of the mistruths that are contained within them, the revisions of history that have become evident, the exaggerations, the demonstration of Harry's wife to spend most of her time talking about herself, the fact that Harry's wife is using this as a personal vendetta to tackle all of the perceived insults that she believes that she has received throughout her life. It's a form of vigilantism, if you will, over the airwaves, although of course very few people are being taken in by it and see it for what it is. We see lots of different facets of her narcissism in action, from the sense of entitlement, her word salads, the failure to listen, the fact that she shows no accountability for her behaviours, the grandiosity of exaggeration, the fact that she believes everybody wants to hear about her, the lack of emotional empathy for those that are being interviewed, and for, of course, those that have the misfortune to have to listen. And one of those that has the regular misfortune to listen, of course, is the excellent Hilary Rose. And it is necessary, of course, to examine what she has to write to determine, does she maintain the same view that these podcasts are ridiculous? And how does she view that? Has her view changed? Perhaps she finds some excellence within them. And also, what about the members of the public who read the reviews and listen to it? Have they changed their view? Hilary Rose writes as follows. Today, I am all about positivity. You could power a small garden shed with the positive vibes bouncing off me, even though I don't own any healing crystals, haven't added any spirulina to anything, and haven't meditated or said, Om. I don't even write a gratitude list. And if I did, it would read, Crumpets exist. And I don't think that's what we're supposed to be grateful for. But here I am, Little Miss Positive, for a new Harry's Wife's podcast, which I heard tell would be the last, but say it ain't so. Who could tire of the sage of Monty Shitshow? I prepare to be uplifted. Om. First, some background. It has been an exciting week in Monty Shitshow. Kerry Kennedy called the Sussexes heroic and praised them for their courage. The old me, pre-vibes, would have snorted and said, Who, she? Now I consider the things Harry and Harry's wife have said, the hurt they have caused, the bullying allegations that she denies, and the life of entitled luxury into which he was born and she married. And I am humbled. Such heroism, such courage. Once, I would have doubled over at the news that last week's podcast, which, lest we forget, was thought-provoking and energising, is less popular than a podcast of lullabies for getting babies to sleep. Who could have guessed that vacuous twaddle isn't very interesting, not even when it's enlivened with platitudes? And what an opportunity for Harry's wife to meet the lullaby competition head-on and market her podcast in the way it so richly deserves, as a sleep aid. And so, to this week's, which is called Beyond the Archetype, Human Being. I channel my positive vibes. It hurts. Harry's wife begins. She has a piece of art in her sitting room, she says, bearing 4 words, "Humankind, be both." And I will remember those words and take heart on the days I wake up to find that I am not, in fact, human, but a subspecies of fish. Harry's wife continues, "You're not just a human being. You're a human, just being." Quite so. Look, I tried, but before you know it, she's saying, I wanted to revisit a large piece of my origin story. And I mean, come on! Really? Out loud? Do you mean I went back to my old school? Or is that just not pompous enough? Oh my gosh, my locker was over there, she says, pointing to something we can't see, because this is a podcast. Which one? Says an obedient minion, breathless with excitement. Someone says, "We believe them to be who it is we are." And far away, in London, I close my eyes and say, Om. Thus far, Harry's wife has closed every episode by asking which 3 words guests would use to describe themselves, first as a child, then today, and that's fine. Then she adds, those words don't serve simply as a reflection on the past, those words are a chance for another kind of reflection, which is meaningless, and therefore not fine. So I take refuge in another Om and feel better. We talk about embracing the nuances that make us quite simply a human being, but no mention if you're a subspecies of fish, and how, in this episode, we will be talking to people who own who they are, who do also model the complexity of the human experience. In August, when this series started, I used to try to translate this into words, but now I think sounds may be the answer. Let's try bleh, Om. We learn that Candice Bushnell has a pink plaid blanket, which instantly made Harry's wife light up, and that's the main thing. We also learn from Harry's wife that the 90s were a pivotal moment in terms of the news, which is true, because it was 1996 when Take That split up, and very little has happened before or since. Bushnell is allowed to say interesting things about her inspirations for writing Sex and the City, but adds, I did not make a ton of money from Sex and the City. The obvious next question, one which might elicit an interesting answer, would be, how come? How did that make you feel? Harry's wife asks. We end the podcast, as always, with Harry's wife sticking 2 fingers up to everyone who doesn't think she's wonderful. I find it so inspiring to listen to women who are clear on who they are, unwavering, not waffling, confident in spite of whatever barriers they might have seen, she says. She wishes she could bottle up that inspiring feeling of liberation when you shed all your fears of judgment, and get on a private jet out of England, for example, and when, wait for it, you sit in your authenticity. Of course. This was billed as the penultimate episode, but you know what worries me? Does Harry's wife know what penultimate means? See you next Tuesday, and the one after that. And of course, an excellent piss take of the content of The Pod Crab by Hilary Rose. I will, of course, be picking apart its various aspects in a separate video, but I know that many of you enjoy hearing what Hilary Rose has to write about it. Of course, no change in her attitude towards Harry's wife. She sees her as a cartoon character, a vacuous, ridiculous individual who is there to be lampooned, and she does so excellently well. A serious journalist not taking Harry's wife seriously, joining the ranks of many who have formed that view, and, on the evidence, are maintaining that position. This, of course, does not bode well for Harry's wife. It's all challenge fuel, were she to see it. Of course, she may not do so, and therefore it doesn't affect her. But she wants to be taken seriously, and unfortunately, nobody does, other than those that have a vested interest in their own agenda, which includes Harry's wife. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.